I need strong letters of rec.
But I am freaking shy. I was in large classes. I didn't know my professors well. Couldn't make it to office hours. Grades are mediocre. I'm graduating next year and we got hit by the freaking pandemic.
This is me, and if this is you, welcome to the club.
You are watching the right video. All of my letters of rec came from my senior year and my gap year, and this is how I pulled through. If you have general concerns about the letter of rec, like how many, when to get them, who should you get them from, when should you get them by, go check out the letter of rec 101 video before you watch this one. Today, I'm really going to go into the specifics of how to get strong letters of rec when you don't have a strong connection to your professor. Let's just get straight into this. I'm just going to be honest. When you're in a large class, there is really no time for you to get to know your professor. Even if you go to office hours, there's likely going to be a large group there as well asking questions. So it's okay if your professors don't know you that well. You are going to provide them with information they need to know you more personally and create opportunities to do so, like inviting them for coffee to discuss your career aspirations. I know it sounds crazy and quite intimidating, but I really wish I had done this, and trust me, it's totally normal. So don't try to force things about yourself when you're in a conversation with your professor about class material. It's gonna come off really awkward. Your goal with academic letter writers while you're taking their class is to just genuinely show interest in the class and engage in whatever capacity you find comfortable. If you are shy to speak up in class, attend their office hours, especially early on in the semester or the quarter, because there are going to be less students there and you can sort of get more of that one-on-one time with them. Even if you don't contribute that much during office hours, being there will at least allow your professors to recognize you and recall that you were an active learner in their class. If you are unable to make it to any of the office hours, just let your professors know that and see if you can set up a separate meeting with them every now and then to discuss, questions that you're having or if you're struggling in their class. But if that doesn't work out either and you have an urgent question, it's likely that you can reach out to them via email. This then becomes something that you could have them talk about while they are writing your letter of recommendation, because this shows that you are prioritizing your learning and you are finding ways to make the most out of it. Another way to get on your professor's good side is if you find their research interesting, geek out to them about it, ask them questions. People love to talk about themselves, especially if this is something that they have spent a large portion of their career doing. Doing so will really demonstrate your curiosity, your passion for learning, and your inquisitive nature. You might even find a research opportunity, so it's like killing two birds with one stone. And if those three things are just not it for you, try to at least go to TA office hours. I personally find it less intimidating that way, and while the professor is not directly interacting with you, having a strong relationship with your TA can allow them to put in a good word for you when you do ask your professor to write you a letter of rec, and they can really bring forth examples for your professors to talk about in their letter. In short, I think the key is to show up, demonstrate that you're curious and you're always willing to learn. Next, I want to point out that there are two camps and you're gonna fall into one or the other. So one is good grades and the other one is having not so great grades. The unfortunate reality is your professor is going to be less willing to write you a letter of recommendation if your GPA is not so awesome. For some professors, it's a 3.9 or 4.0. Some professors might be more flexible and be okay with a 3.5 or above. And so if you happen to fall into the good grades section, I think it's going to be a lot easier for you to get a letter of rec. But if you fall into the other camp, like I did, but you have a legit reason for it and you can demonstrate how you have tried to improve or bounce back through like exam scores, quiz scores, I would say go ahead and ask for that letter anyway and explain your situation. Chances are your professors are going to understand and they are going to be more willing to write you a letter of rec. But if you don't have a real reason and you're consistently getting bad grades, I think it's time to maybe take a step back and sort of reevaluate your learning strategy and maybe take some additional science classes to try to boost your score. And if that still doesn't work out, then maybe you are not yet ready for the rigor of med school. All right, so you've taken the class and you've identified a potential letter writer. Make sure you let them know that you are interested in requesting a letter of recommendation for med school from them and why you chose them to be your letter writer. You want to do this as soon as the term ends, and asking in person is ideal. I know it can be really scary, but don't hesitate to ask your professor even if they don't know you that well yet. This is something that can be fixed, and we'll go into depth on how to do that in a second here. But the worst thing that can happen is they say no and you can go and find somebody else to write you a letter. Do give them the option to say no. Don't try to pressure them or give them a million reasons why they should write you a letter, because having a neutral or a weak letter can do more harm than good. If you don't need a letter from that professor right away, just let them know what your intentions are and that you are going to stay in touch with them and give them periodic updates. However, if you are already hitting senior year and you have not been able to identify a potential letter writer, go enroll in a science course that falls under the biology, chemistry, physics category ASAP and implement the tips that I gave above.
But I've already satisfied all my science requirements, me.
Do you want to get into med school?
Yeah, I thought so.
Unless you are planning on getting a master's or continuing taking classes after your senior year, now's the time to do it. This is your last chance, so just get it out of the way. After they agree and now the time has come to actually request the letter from them, always propose the option to meet up and discuss things in person. And also ask them what do they feel like they need from you in order to write a strong letter. So whatever that might be, in addition to the things that they requested, there are a few things that I want to recommend you to include in your email to them so that they can have as a reference. Now, I really want to emphasize that this is super important, especially if you don't have a strong connection to your professor. You want their writing process to be as resistance-free as possible. You don't want them to have to think, to have any questions. That way, they will be more willing to write you a letter, and a strong one at that. So here are the things that you want to include in your email to them, in addition to the information that they requested. So I'm just going to go through the list here. The first thing you want to include is your legal name, the name you prefer to go by, how you know them, whether through class, work, or volunteering, etc. When you knew them, the grade you got in the class, if it's an academic letter. And some letter writers will also request a transcript, so just have it ready to send off if they ask for it. The next thing I want to say that some people might think it's weird to do, but I don't at all, is if you are concerned that they won't recognize you after all this time and will have trouble recollecting some of the things about you, include a professional headshot in your email to just help them recall who you are. The third thing is to include a final or a near final draft of your personal statement, your work and activities section. I also included my disadvantage essay, so if you have that, include that as well, just to give them a little bit more context about who you are. The next thing is you want to include what you want the letter to be focused on. For example, do you want them to talk about your academic abilities or your potential as a physician, your teamwork, your commitment to medicine, your leadership potential, yada, yada, yada. And with this, you want to give them some talking points. Mention specific things, moments, contributions that you have done to really help prompt their writing. I don't know what number we're on now, but the next thing is to include the AMCAS letter guidelines. I will link this in the description box down below. This is just in case if your professor is not really familiar with the writing process, this will give them a general guide to follow, so you can make sure that the letter is meeting all of the requirements. Moving on, I recommend listing the AMCAS core competencies that you demonstrated while you were in the class or in your role, and have them attest to those. This will also help to serve as a guideline for the things that you want them to talk about. In addition, you also want to give them a brief reminder that the letter should be in PDF format, be on official letterhead, and be signed. This is very important for the letter to be approved and accepted. Now, towards the end, there are a few additional things that you want to remind them to include, such as how they should go about uploading the letter. So I personally use Interfolio. They are a $48 per year subscription service, and I really recommend this if you are able to purchase it. By using Interfolio, I was able to have all of my letters ready before the application even opens. And it makes it super easy for my letter writers since they don't have to create a separate account to upload those letters. The great thing is that they also check to make sure your letter is signed and is on official letterhead before you send it off to AMCAS. This video is in no way sponsored by Enterfolio. This is just a service that I have used and have found really helpful. Along with instructions on how to go about completing the letter, you also want to tell them when you would like to have your letter by. And I would set an earlier deadline than the actual deadline. So for example, I wanted my application to be completed on the day that the application opens for submission, which for me was May 25th. So the deadline that I set was May 15th. And that brings me to the end of the list of the things that you want to include in your email. If after some time has passed and you still haven't heard from your professor, or if you weren't notified that the letter has been uploaded, send them a reminder email 2 to 3 weeks prior to the deadline that you have set. And once they have finished the letter of rec for you, don't forget to send them a thank you email because they really took time out of their day to do this for you. All right, so now let's address
The worst case scenario.
If you have made it this far and you still feel like you can't pull through and you really want to apply this year, go ask your TA to write your letter of rec for you and have your professor co-sign it. That is the important part. But this really relies on you having a super strong connection to your TA. Otherwise, I feel like it's a no-go. But realize that even so, this is not going to hold as much weight as if it was coming directly from your professor. I know this process is super hard, but I am right here for you. And if you have any additional questions or concerns, drop them in the comment section down below. I hope you found this video helpful. And as always, best wishes, warmest regards. Until next time, bye.